Good morning. This is Ken McDermott, the coordinator for the South Atlantic LCC. You are joining our third Thursday web forum, our monthly web forum, and just a few comments on technology here. If I could ask everybody to make sure that their phone is muted when they are not looking to speak. I'm hearing some background noise right now, so that would be helpful. Secondly, is there anybody that's having trouble, or if anybody's having trouble connecting through the webinar, if you can let me know that, then we'll see if we can give you some help. And thirdly, as we go through this, if you have any questions or issues that you need to raise in the background, feel free to send a chat to Janet Shakir on staff here, and she'll try to help you out. So with that, I'd love to welcome you to the monthly web forum for the South Atlantic LCC. We're really happy today to focus on most of the web forum on a project that's been long in the development, and that's the Conservation Planning Atlas, which Amy Keister will be presenting. So real quickly, you want to do introductions. We're going to do that monthly topic on the Conservation Planning Atlas. Have questions and discussion regarding that, the Atlas, and then we'll have just a few updates for you all from the South Atlantic LCC in general, and then if you have any questions or discussion about that, we'll be happy to take whatever time that you have for that as well. So any questions, issues right now before we turn it over to Amy? All right, it sounds like everybody's good to go. Again, if you have any problems or questions you need to ask along the way, you can send them to Janet Shakir through the chat box. We will have time at the end for questions on the discussion itself, but if you have any technology issues or anything like that, you can send those to Janet. So, Amy, I apologize. Just want to make sure you saw who's all here today, and that is myself and Rua, our science coordinator's on the phone, and Janet's here, and I think Lori's not here, and obviously Amy's, as our GIS specialist, is ready to go for the presentation. So take it away, Amy.
Well, thank you, Ken, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're very excited to share the Southeast Conservation Planning Atlas with you. And so we have quite a bit of material to cover today, and so I'm going to go pretty quickly through it, but I'm just so excited to have this product finally available for you all to explore. So to get started, again, we're talking about the Southeast Conservation Planning Atlas, and we call that the CPA for short. And I just wanted to start by giving you kind of a brief overview of how this fits into the South Atlantic LCC. And so, as you all know, the mission of the South Atlantic LCC is to create a shared blueprint for landscape conservation actions that sustain natural and cultural resources. And that blueprint is going to be an interactive living plan that describes the places and actions needed to meet the South Atlantic LCC conservation priorities in the face of future change. And so to achieve that mission, that's a pretty big mission, we need to be able to understand and model the forces that drive change on our landscape. And so with that in mind, your LCC is supporting the development of spatial models that will form the foundation of our blueprint. And so some example of the type of models that we have available, we have things like projected urban growth, projected changes in sea level rise and marshlands affected by that sea level rise. We have spatial data that shows us potential field alterations. So these are the kind of foundational data sets that are going to form our blueprint. And so the output of these spatial models are becoming available now. And so as your LCC is working to integrate these models into the bigger context of the blueprint, we also want to make these data available to all of our partners and to the public in general. And so that is where we see the Conservation Planning Atlas fitting into our mission. And so The South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas is a place where you can find and explore these spatial data. And the things that you can do with this atlas, we can store data, we can import data that somebody else is serving up in a different format, we can search for data, view data, we can do some basic analysis of the data. And just as a reminder, right now we're wanting to serve up this foundational spatial data, but very soon we're going to be serving up the spatial representation of our blueprint in the Conservation Planning Atlas. And of course, as you all know, the need to share spatial data is not unique to the Southeast LCC, and that's why the title of this pilot project is the Southeast Conservation Pilot Project. And just a little bit of history on how we got here. The South Atlantic LCC had a team trying to figure out how to share spatial data at the same time that the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks LCC had a team going. And so we realized that we had very similar needs and needed to work together. So we formed a joint team, and then we had sub-teams, and just kind of wanting to let you know that we were coordinating. I won't get into the dirty details of how all that coordinating happened, but you all know how these things go. We had an advanced apps group and a user group that were focused on two different aspects of what we were trying to do with the Conservation Planning Atlas. And so just to kind of sum it up, it was a coordinated effort across LCCs in the Southeast. And the reasons why you see the South Atlantic and the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks playing a more active role is because they were started earlier, and so they had people to work on this project, but we also were working with other Southeast LCCs during the pilot project, which is still ongoing. And so not only do we have the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas, we also have the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks Conservation Planning Atlas and the Southeast Region Conservation Planning Atlas. And these are a hierarchy of atlases that all go together in the Southeast Conservation Planning Atlas pilot. And the objectives, all these groups, as you would imagine, formulated objectives, what we wanted from the Conservation Planning Atlas. And just to kind of quickly put some stuff up there, our target user was the casual GIS user. We weren't looking to, our target audience is people who aren't necessarily GIS users. They might not have desktop GIS on their machines, but still need a place to see and visualize the spatial data. We wanted a web-based platform. We wanted to be able to serve up our own data and also consume data from other sources. We wanted to be able to access and discover new data that's relevant to the LCC's planning process and integrate that. And we also wanted some basic geoprocessing. And so the considerations that we put into this in the pilot overlap with our overall mission. And so our overall mission in the LCC is not to duplicate the good work of others. And so that's why we decided to build the Conservation Planning Atlas on an existing platform. We also did not want to overburden users that overlap multiple LCCs. That was a big thing that came out of our work in the user group. Is we know we have a lot of partners who work in multiple LCCs. We didn't want them to have two totally separate experiences when they were trying to find spatial data. So we have easy navigation between geographic areas. And again, we also wanted to target non-technical users. So we wanted to make sure that you don't have to have desktop GIS to use the Conservation Planning Atlas. And one of the big questions that came up through the pilot was, what about all the other geospatial viewers? As you all are probably aware, there's a lot of geospatial viewers out there for good reason. We have a lot of spatial data and conservation to share with one another. And so just a very brief handful of some of the other examples of viewers out there. I just picked one of the many viewers that NOAA has, really wonderful resource that NOAA has collected. So this is the sea level rise and coastal flooding impacts. It's a great viewer. You can actually click on pictures and they show examples of what sea level rise would look like based on models. And it's just a really cool viewer. There's also the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council has a great set of viewers out there to look at specific data relative to them. The Southern Forest for the Future has a really neat viewer. We have the TACAMO viewer, the Template Assessing Climate Change viewer, and so this is, a few out of many viewers that are available. They're serving up spatial data. And so a big question in our pilot is, how do we interact with these viewers? What is our role? And so we just decided we were going to convert everyone to use our viewer. And then there was a rerun of The Lord of the Rings on cable, and we realized that that might not be the best idea. There might be some unforeseen consequences trying to make one viewer to rule them all. So we decided that's not a good idea. So we decided we need to integrate with all these other viewers, because those viewers are out there for a reason, and a lot of times they're serving a very specific function that we're not going to try to replicate. But how do we make sure that our users can get what they need from our viewer and also be aware of other viewers that are out there? Or if they don't ever see our viewer, how can they get our data by going to one of these other viewers? So that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. So one way that we're trying to handle that, for example, is we are currently consuming data from the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council. And so we are bringing in data that they're serving up in their viewer into our viewer. So that's one way that we can kind of interact between viewers. And we'll look at some of these. I'll do a live demo here in a minute, and we'll look at some examples of this. We can go the other way, too. So for the TACAMO viewer, we're trying to figure out how to get some of our data into the TACAMO viewer. So Forest Service people and other people, TACAMO is a pretty general tool, people who are already used to using the TACAMO viewer, they don't have to come to our viewer. They can get the data that we're serving up through the viewer that they're most familiar with, that suits their needs best. And then we're also trying to link up with the Climate Science Center Geodata Portal derivatives. That has been, it's not quite done yet. That's why I have the little broken arrow there. It's been a bit of a challenge because it was creating some new capability on the existing platform that we're using. We're building off of Databasin. And so it was a little more than we expected it to be to connect that. But we're still trying to get that connection finalized. And so now I want to go into examples of how the Conservation Planning Atlas could be used. And again, I want to apologize that we're kind of going to be rushing through this, but I just want to give you an example and hopefully give you enough of the interest that you're going to want to go check out the viewer and play on your own. And so before we go to the live demo, I just did some screen captures of the three gateways, the three Conservation Planning Atlas nodes that are in the pilot project. And so you can kind of see the user group spent a lot of time thinking about how do we have a similar look and feel so that people aren't completely lost when they navigate to a different viewer, but you have the ability to target it to our users more specifically. And so at this point, let's exit out of the PowerPoint, and everybody cross your fingers and hope that nothing goes wrong with the internet connection. It's always exciting to do a live demo. And so here, I've already pulled up, we are located live on the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas homepage. And so we saw a screenshot of this earlier, but you can see when you look at this, we kind of have three main sections to the home page. So first of all, you know you're at the home page because you can see the South Atlantic logo at the top, and you also see a menu bar at the top. No matter where you go in the Planning Atlas, no matter which gateway you're on, you're going to see the same menu bar. So that's one of the things that we try to do to keep the feel familiar. When you go to the next little section, this portion here where the little button that says, what is the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas? This region of the homepage is kind of the introduction. If you haven't been to the homepage before, you can learn more about what this effort is about. You can learn what you can do here. You can start exploring data sets and browse maps and take tours. And so here's just kind of a general orientation section of our homepage. And then when you scroll down a little bit further in this middle portion, you see we have 3 panels here, and we've highlighted some things. This is more focused towards people who want to just get in there and grab some data. And so we've got some galleries that you can look at. We have some recommended items. We have a quick start map. I'm going to come back to this section and explore it in more detail later. But I first want to go down to the very bottom and show you that we also have links to the other conservation planning atlases at the bottom of our homepage. So the idea there is if you had a link to the South Atlantic Landscape Conservation Cooperative, but you really realize that you're more interested in the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks, you can quickly navigate to their homepage. And so that's one way we're trying to make it easy to navigate between these portals that are nested together. So I'm going to go back to the South Atlantic page and point out that you can also do that in the Browse menu. There's multiple ways to get to things. We tried to make it easy. You don't have to remember the perfect way to do something because there are multiple ways to get where you want to go. And so that's our homepage. And I think you can see that there are similarities between the gateway homepages. So hopefully people will have that feeling of familiarity no matter which gateway they land at. And so the next thing I want to look at really quickly is in the menu bar under Get Started, there's a pretty helpful glossary. There's other stuff here where you can take a tour, but first I want to look at the glossary because there are some new terms that we start using that match up with the terms that Databasin uses. And so it's helpful if we kind of all get the same page on what these terms mean. And so the first thing is guides and case studies. And we currently, for the Conservation Planning Atlas, haven't created yet our own particular guides and case studies. So that's one of the things that I would love to get feedback from you all to find out how you're using the Conservation Planning Atlas, and we can give some examples to other people about how you were able to use this resource. And so that's one thing that's going to be coming soon. And you'll find when you're navigating through our page, you'll find when you click on Guides and Case Studies, it says Coming Soon. The next thing is galleries. Galleries are kind of a group of data. And so you can create a gallery, and we've created a couple of galleries that we've highlighted on our homepage where we can organize and put together similar types of data, and we'll look at those in more detail. There are also maps. You can create a map. I can create a map. We have a link to a particular map on our homepage as well. Maps are just what you would think they are. They are maps that you can add multiple data layers in. You can add a drawing on. You can put a base map in there. You can overlay layers in the map. The layers that you would be overlaying are called data sets. And so you can add data sets, or you can look at data sets that are already in our gateway or in Databasin as a whole. And then the final thing, the members are hopefully going to be you all. I hope that you're going to be able to become a member of the Conservation Planning Atlas. And then the groups are places where you can have a private group or a public group, and you can share maps, data, either privately or publicly if you're wanting to do that. So just kind of get us all on the same page of terminology. I know sometimes that is a tricky one. So now, back to our home page. I said that we were going to revisit this middle panel, and so you'll notice we talked about galleries, and so we've created 3 galleries that we have specific links to on our home page. We have marine resources, terrestrial resources, and aquatic resources. And in talking with our user group, we felt that that was a pretty natural way. We felt that anybody that comes to our website is going to find themselves primarily identifying with one of those groups. And so we created galleries or collections of data for those groups. So for an example, I'm going to go into the marine resources. And you can see that we've added some data sets to this gallery. So this is a collection of information related to marine resources in the South Atlantic. And all of these data are data that we have brought in from other web services. And so we've brought in things from the Fisheries Management Council. We've brought in things from the Digital Coast from NOAA. We've right now just kind of got a collection of sampling of data in here. We're continuing to update and import new data sets as we learn and grow. And in your gallery, you can give credit. So it's important when we're bringing in data from other places to give credits to where that data comes from, and also give users the opportunity to visit the pages where these data come from to get more information about it. So since we've brought in data from the NOAA Gulf of Mexico Data Atlas, we are providing a link to their page so that our users can understand where that data is coming from. And you can also add comments into galleries if people have comments about data or questions about data. This is a way to kind of interactively talk with one another about the data or maps in these galleries. And so that is one example of galleries that we have. The middle panel here is called Recommended Items. And this panel is going to change when we add new data sets. We will update this Recommended Items area so that you'll see when new data sets or maps are added to the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas. And so right now I just wanted to show you an example of some recently added data. So I'm going to click on this risk of flow alterations. And so when I click on that, I see that this is a data set. And this is a data set. I can read the metadata about it at this page. So I can see the description. This data set was actually is being brought in and consumed as a map service that's being served up by SALCC. And so we can read a little bit about what this data layer is, and we also have links to the data sources so you can read even more about the data. And so I just wanted to kind of show you there's a lot of ways to get to places in this, but I just wanted to really quickly open this risk of flow alteration in a map so that you can see how easy it is to start exploring data. And so now I have a map open, and I have this risk of flow alteration open, this data layer open in this map. And you can see I have a window here on the side that lists my data set. I have a window over here that tells me the legend of the data set that is currently being displayed. And so I'd just like to zoom in on this area a little more tightly. Oops, it went away. I swear I was just doing this like 15 minutes ago. Let's see. Okay, well, we won't do that example. Let's go back to our home page and pick another layer. Let's look at this sea level rise layer. So you can open this in the map. And this is kind of a complicated layer because this is our future projections of sea level rise based on SLAM that we're using as some of our foundational data. And so we actually have multiple years for this layer. We have decadal projections from 2010 to 2100. So if we look at 2050, just to show you some examples of some of the things that you can do. Let's say if you're working in South Carolina, you want to zoom in to South Carolina. And you want to be able to see, you can adjust some of the way that these things are displayed. So let's say I just want to make it a little bit transparent so that I can start to see the background. Just as another example, something you can do, you can change your base map. So I'm going to change it to more of a black and white. And so let's say I was just needing to get to a meeting. I knew this data was out there. I wanted to zoom into a particular area and see the projections for 2050. I can adjust some of those different layers, and I can just export this out. And so, for example, if I have 5 minutes, I need to get to a meeting, I want to bring this as an example as a discussion for the meeting, I can export this as a PDF, a PNG, or a PowerPoint. So let's say I want to just toss this in a PowerPoint. So I can choose that and submit it. Thinking. And it always happens, you know, I was practicing this an hour ago and it was pretty quick, but live demos will get you every time. So anyway, so here we have, I just downloaded that. It's already in a PowerPoint slide. It shows me that area that I zoomed into. It shows me the legend that goes along with these data. It gives me a little overview map of where I'm at in the world. It then also gives details about the map content. So right now I just have one data layer in the map, and it tells me about that data layer. So that's one of the things that really came out in our user group is this was a big request that we had from people. We had people who, I know you all have some data, I want to be able to zoom into a particular area, make a map, and grab it, take it to a meeting. I don't want to have to open up ArcGIS Desktop in order to do this. And so this is something that people were pretty excited about having this capability.
Yeah.
So that's one example of what we can do, and that's just looking at one particular data set in a map. I want to take a minute here to show you our Quick Start map. So we thought that we'd have some people that may be a little bit like me, where I sometimes come to a site like this and have been guilty of not taking a lot of time to read the directions. I'm not very good at direction reading. And so we wanted a Quick Start map where people could just click on it and get a map fast. And so we created this map with some of our foundational data inside of it. And we just wanted people to be able to really quickly, you're in the South Atlantic Landscape Conservation Cooperative. We wanted you to be able to see what the geographic extent of that cooperative is and get some of our more unique data layers. So what automatically comes on whenever you open this Quick Start map is you see the protected area database, which tends to be more focused on land, and then we also have the marine protected areas inventory, which gets more to that marine component. So those are the things that are automatically turned on. And again, you'll notice that we're in a map, but this time instead of having one data set that we're exploring, we have multiple data sets that we're looking at. And I just wanted to show you really quickly. Let's say that I want to look at a particular area around Okefenokee. So I can use this locate button, and I know that I want to find Okefenokee. I kind of picked one that I don't know how to spell, so that'll be interesting. Oh, I got it. Excellent. And so I just searched for Okefenokee, and I get some different options. And I'm particularly interested in the National Wildlife Refuge, because let's say there's an area around that refuge that I'm interested in exploring. So it finds it for me, and I can zoom in. I actually got a little excited and didn't zoom in. So let's try that again. Let's zoom in there instead of closing it. Okay, I'm going to zoom one more time and start to explore some of the data layers and capabilities that we have here. Similarly to the many different ways to get to things, there's a couple of different ways. If you already are pretty confident and know what, are familiar with GIS, know what you want to do, you might notice that there's some add data buttons here. But let's say you want to add a new data layer. If you are not really sure what you can do, you have this area of the map up here where it will kind of help you find the right button. So let's say you want to add data sets, a different data set than what's already available. If you click there, it'll highlight where you want to go. Or if you want to create a drawing, it'll kind of help you find a drawing. So this is a helpful little portion of your map to get familiar with the tools that are available in DataBasin. If you don't want those tools and you want to see more of the map, you can close those. And if you want to see even more of the map, you can go full screen and get rid of some of that white space. So it's all depending on your preference. So here I am. I've zoomed in to this area around Okefenokee, and I can pan around, and I want to turn on our projected urban growth. And so I see I have my window that shows my available data set. Just like the projected sea level rise from SLAM, our projected urban growth has many different future scenarios. And so it's automatically going to show us the 2050. And you'll notice as soon as I turn on a layer in the dataset window, it gives us the legend, the corresponding legend in the legend window. And so here, let's say I was curious. I'm familiar with Okefenokee, and so I can click on there just to confirm that the protected area database is showing me that this is the Okefenokee Wilderness Area, which is a wildlife refuge. But I wanted to know, there seems to be some state land up here that I wanted to know the name of. So I can identify that. And find out that that's the Dixon Memorial Wildlife Management Area. And let's say I just wanted to share this map with somebody, but I wanted to be able to direct their attention to the Dixon area without them having to click identify. I can add a drawing. And so if I click on this add drawing, I'm going to just call this an area of interest. And I can control how it looks. I'm just going to choose to show it with no fill and a dark black border. And now let's just say I want to draw a circle around this because this is what I want my partner to focus on. So that looks pretty good, so I'm going to submit that. And now I've added a drawing to this map. And at this point, I can save this map. And let's say I don't want to make it public, I just want to share it with one particular person. I can fill in, I'm not going to take the time to do it now, but I can fill in the title and explain why I made this map. And once I submit that, I'll get the option to share it with any user on databases that I'd like to share it with. And so this can be, I've actually just worked on communicating with some people about some particular area of interest using this method. And so that's one thing that we're kind of excited about.
Amy.
Yes.
This is Doug. What are the options for the licensing down there? I see the Creative Commons.
So,
okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question, Doug. And I guess I should have mentioned that if y'all, you can stop me and ask questions. I will have a point for questions at the end, and I've just got a few more things to show you because we're going to eat up our hour pretty fast here. But if you have a burning question, please feel free to ask it. Okay, so I'm actually going to exit this and go back to our home page. Oops, I got all excited and I forgot to show you something. I'm going to stay on this page. I'm changing my mind all over the place. I'm going to stay on this page, and I wanted to highlight this whole concept of making it easy for people who cross LCC boundaries. And so I've zoomed in to a place that is within the South Atlantic LCC. But what we've tried to do is when we have data sets that extend beyond our boundaries, we don't cut them off at the edge of our boundary. And so we have this projected urbanization layer, and you can see it extends beyond the South Atlantic LCC. I'm scrolling down here. Let me pull up an overview so that you can see where we are. So I can bring up a locator map, and you can see we're in Florida. And so here we're getting into Peninsular Florida LCC if I turn off the South Atlantic LCC. you can see that our data layers, when they are available, extend beyond our boundaries. And that's part of our idea of making it easy for people who cross LCC boundaries. We don't want them to have to exit one gateway and get to another gateway just so that they can see a full picture of their area. We do have issues sometimes when a data set was developed just for one area, and in those cases, we can't extend it beyond the point where it exists, but we do have the ability, when we have the data, to extend beyond our boundaries. And so that was kind of the last thing I wanted to show you in the mapping application. And again, we're going really quick, and there's all kinds of fantastic things you can do here. I just wanted to highlight a few, hopefully wet your whistle a little bit so that you'll come back and visit us again. And so I'm going to go back to the home page. I'm going to leave this page. And I just wanted to show you a couple other things before we open up for questions. If we go to Browse, that's a pretty fun button to go to. We can look at galleries that belong to the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas, maps, data sets. I want to look at data sets because I want to show you some search functionality. And so if we look at data sets, immediately you're given some recommended data sets. And so these are data sets that we think are going to be of particular interest to you that we want to draw your attention to in the South Atlantic LCC. That's at the top portion of this page. In the bottom portion, you can see you also have access to data sets that have not been tagged in the South Atlantic LCC, but have been tagged in another LCC gateway. And so that's another way you can navigate between data layers, even if you're in one gateway. So let's say I want to search for a particular data layer. When I go to search, I'm going to search for vegetation. So I'm automatically in a simple search mode, and when I hit search, there is one vegetation layer that comes up, and that's the gap vegetation. And that's a data set that we're using that is queued up in one of the recommended data sets in the South Atlantic LCC. But let's say I wanted some more vegetation data sets. The reason why I'm only seeing one is we wanted to keep our users from being overwhelmed. That was one thing that we got a lot of feedback from in our user group, is they felt overwhelmed sometimes when they went to gateways, and there was so much data and they didn't know which one to use. So we're trying to give them a first stab. Here's what we think you want. If you want to expand the search more, you can hit that advanced search, and you can see that automatically, since you entered the South Atlantic gateway, you're searching just within the South Atlantic CPA. Let's say I want to search in all of the LCC conservation planning atlases. If I hit that search, you can see that I'm now showing 12 data layers. And so you can get a few more this way. And again, these are all tagged within an LCC. You come to an LCC gateway. These may be things that you're particularly interested in. But if you search through those 12 and you still didn't find what you want, you can search in all of data basins. And when you do that, you see that you get 2,345 items. And so that might give you some idea of why the user group said, please help us identify a particular land cover that you want to point our attention to. And so that's one thing that came out of our user group. And so that is my last demo. I just wanted to mention one thing. Right now, we don't have, when you look at this browse, we don't have any groups up there yet. And so I wanted to show you really quickly the Gulf Coast of Plains and Ozarks LCC. They do have groups up there. And they've got a couple of groups. Let's look at their featured groups. And so this is a group that's a public group. So if you're interested, it's the Ozarks Highlands Comprehensive Conservation Strategy Group. If you're interested in that group, you can read a little bit about it, and then you can ask to join it. And a group is just a place where you can have a private group or a public group. You can share data sets. You can share maps. You can share supplemental information, Word docs that are appropriate for that group. So it's a collaborative space that you can use. And so I wanted to encourage you all. Since we haven't had this webinar yet. We haven't created any groups, but I would love to hear feedback from you about what kind of groups you would like to see in our gateway. And so with that, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint really quickly, and then we'll open up for questions. So I didn't want to get off the phone here without giving acknowledgments to all of the people that contributed to this effort. It was a really big effort. And so we had a core team, Ed Laurent, Blair Turpak, Alexis Londo, Rua Mordecai, John Turpak, and myself working on this. We also, since our platform is built partially on Databasin and partially on LC-MAP, which is a science-based platform, but Databasin did all the support to make this thing as pretty as it is. And so we want to give credits to Tasha, Brendan, and Tara, who have been fantastic and very responsive in getting our requests met. And then we also had the user experience team and the advanced applications team. And just because of time considerations, I'm not going to read out names, but I think some of the people on this call were on the user experience team or the advanced app team. And those people spent a lot of time thinking about how to create a conservation planning atlas that really meets the needs of our Southeast LCCs. I just wanted to close up with what our next steps are for this. And so we're still in a pilot phase. So our next step is to provide support to you. And so I've got my phone number and my email up there. I really encourage you to give me a call or an email if you are using the Planning Atlas and have any questions or suggestions. And so we're going to be collecting your feedback. And then I'd also like to create some user stories from your experience so that we can fill in those user guides. And with that, I'm going to open up for questions. And thank you so much for coming and listening about this.
Amy, you said that you showed us an example of a public group. Can you set up private groups? Did you? I might have missed that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And you can set up private groups. And so I can show you really quickly. When you sign up, when you log in, you're going to have this My Workspace. And so I'm going to go to My Groups. I have a private group that I've set up just for the staff here at the South Atlantic so that we can review data before we make it live and available to everybody. And so you all won't be able to see this group, but Rua and I have been passing some data sets back and forth here, and we can add content, supporting documents, and discussions, and nobody can see it unless we're ready to let somebody else in. So that's a good question.
Thank you.
Amy, this is Doug. I do have a question about data formats.
Yeah.
We just recently had that executive order declaring that we need to make data available in open formats. And you mentioned geodatabases is one of the formats. Is it basically you're going to give the data out in whatever format the contributor put it in? Or will it be an effort to convert it to an open format?
We won't at this point make an effort to serve out data. Our goal is to limit our responsibility for handling data that's not ours. And so if people are already serving up data, we don't want to get into a habit of downloading their data and then serving it up ourselves, because we can have a missing link there where they update it and we miss that update and we're providing old data. And so for data that is being provided elsewhere, we are trying not to provide it ourselves. For data that is not being served elsewhere, we are serving it ourselves. And the way that we're doing that is we're actually, most of the data we're loading onto LC-MAP, which is a science-based platform. And when we load that data up there, we're creating ArcGIS REST services, which then Databasin consumes. But we're also creating WMS services. And so you can, when you look at it in Databasin, you're seeing the REST service that's not an open format, but you can also have links to the WMS service.
Do you have any plans on providing those data sets in other service formats like WCS or WFS?
Not at this time. It was actually more work than we had thought it would be to make Databasin compatible with the WMS services. it's a problem just because there's so many different options for how, you know, you don't always have to have a legend, and you don't always have to have some of these fundamental things that databases used to having. And so in the pilot project, we didn't have funds to go beyond WMS services.
Hey, Amy, this is John Stanton.
Hi, John. How are you doing?
Good. Amazing presentation. Very exciting. And the attention you paid to the user groups, I think, is going to be invaluable. So I'm very anxious to get on and kind of take it for a test drive.
Oh, great. I look forward to people getting on it. And please don't hesitate to send me emails and let me know what your experience is, because we're still in a pilot and we can adjust to meet your expectations.
Sounds good. I had a more direct question about the type of data sets that might be hosted. I could see the physical data that you have, landforms and habitat types, is pretty extensive. Is there any discussion or future thinking about hosting biological targets, biological data that is linked to the geospatial?
Yes, and so that's getting closer to our blueprint, and so we're working on, and Rua Mordecai can step in and talk a little bit about our indicator process that the South Atlantic LCC is going through. So we've identified indicators, and we're going through an effort to try to map current and future conditions of those indicators, and I can foresee us, once we get those layers available, putting that on the Conservation Planning Atlas for people to view.
Sounds good. I actually was thinking about that. I'd be very excited. I was actually thinking about data sets that we as users might have that are biological, that if it's truly a user site and we can host our own information and input our own files or our data sets, if there be the opportunity to actually construct some quote-unquote maybe case studies that you referred to earlier and try to host some of the information or data that we have available to ourselves right now prior to the launch of the indicators.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful. And there's a couple of ways. Right now, you can load your own data into Databasin. It won't show up in the Conservation Planning Atlas unless an administrator okays it. Because we were just, again, trying to not overwhelm users. We wanted to have more of a refined group of data so that people don't go there and get 2,000 data sets and get scared and leave. So
even those groups, we might be able to host it in a group and keep it just to that group users.
Exactly. So we can do that. We can host it in a group, and then we can also, you can work with me, or if you're working with another LCC, you can work with the administrator there to talk about, okay, which are the highlights of these data sets that we, let's pick a couple that we want to share with people, and make them available in the Conservation Planning Atlas as a whole, and then the rest of the data we might want to keep accumulated in a group. And so I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation as we continue to add data and develop the site.
Oh, sounds great. I can't get over. I'm very excited. I think you guys have done a great job. So I'm really looking forward to getting it out there and giving it a try.
As far as people's accessibility to this, which I haven't checked the public on, would the average user be able to access this, or do they have to register or be invited to be able to access this?
You don't have to. You can actually view the site without even becoming a member of Databasin. But I would recommend that you do become a member of Databasin so that you can do things like save maps and load data and join in group and things like that. But you can.
Sure, I'm just thinking of a casual user that wants to dip their toe in. They're doing a Google search and there's like, what will sea level rise look like in the South Atlantic LCC? And they Google that. They would get a return for this Databasin site and be able to go there and kind of figure this out and learn about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So if I sign out here, you can see that I'm signed out, but I can still see the home page. I can still click on a gallery and see all the data in the gallery. I just can't save my map. So anything that we make public is available whether you're a member or not.
Okay.
Amy, this is John Faustini. Great presentation. A really exciting product you've got here, and I'm excited to dip into it. I was wondering, you mentioned basic data processing capabilities. What kinds of things do you have in there that we can do with it?
Thank you so much for that question. I'm glad you asked. I didn't have time in my demo, and so I didn't do this, but I'm going to do a blog post and provide you a link to another webinar that was hosted by Alexis Londo of the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks LCC. And she goes through two really great scenarios and shows some of the analysis capabilities. And depending on what your level of GIS is, you might find it to be basic at this time, but you can do things, you can select certain features from a larger data set. You can intersect those with other features. You can summarize. You can buffer. There are some tricks depending on how the data has been imported into the Conservation Planning Atlas. You can have more or less ability to do those things. So, for instance, if somebody's serving a polygon data layer as a tiled map service, you're not going to be able to, do analysis on individual features. And so there are some tricks to that. But I would love to give you all the link to Alexis's wonderful presentation, where she goes through some really great examples of the types of basic analysis that you can do. And I can tell you that in the Advanced Apps group, they had a big, long list of things that they wanted. And so we still have that list. We weren't able to get all of those things on the list in our pilot project, but they still have all the feedback that they got from the Advanced Apps group. And so if we decide to move forward with this pilot and add in more analysis features, we still have that feedback, and there's a list of different things that people want to do, and they have them ranked as a priority and everything. So.
Great, thanks.
Anyway, this is Rachel Muir with the USGS. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rachel?
Good. I had a question. I'm working with Gene Brennan and developing the indicators for the Appalachian LCC, and we don't have a conservation planning site yet, but as we develop those indicators, and some of those indicators are going to be either very similar or the same as some of the ones that you have in the southeast, could we use this location to begin to load up some of that data, as a private group, or?
Yes. So you have a couple of different options there. One thing, if you're just wanting to dip your toes in without really getting committed to it, I think you could probably create a group under the Southeast node for the Appalachian LCC and start loading some data there. Or the Gulf Coastal Prairies LCC is actually going through the process of making their own node right now. So I'm not sure on the pricing now. For the pilots that we did here, it was $25,000 for a gateway, for each gateway. And so depending on, I don't know what their pricing schedule is now, but that's what we paid for the pilot project. And so there's kind of different levels of commitment that you could get into. But if you just want to start loading some data and see if you like it, I think it would make sense. We can work with Ed Laurent, who manages the Southeast gateway or node. I'm sorry, I kind of interchange those terms. And get you a group set up so you can start sharing it. And Paul Leonard was involved in our groups, and so he's familiar with this project and will be able to.
Okay, because you principally want to experiment a little bit and then also see about edge mapping.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing, this is Rua, the North Atlantic LCC has also decided to use this same combination of backend, this database and LCMAP approach. So I think this is the kind of thing that's going to grow beyond just the Southeast.
Yeah, and I knew that was in the works as well, and that would be excellent. That'll give us a fairly uniform approach to, well, in this case, indicators.
And this is really great. I'm glad you brought that up, Rua, because some of the functionality that we're going to benefit from, there's a national LCC project that's looking at the abilities of database and LCMAP to improve their interaction. And so there are additional projects even beyond the North Atlantic and the Gulf Coastal Prairie's LCCs that are working on the interactions between some of these platforms and how to improve the interactions. So.
There's a downscaling effort on a national level at the Climate Science Centers on downscaled regional mapping as well. So eventually that might be something that could be merged onto this, made available through similar platforms as this.
Right, yeah. So we're connected with the GeoData portal. We're trying to connect with their derivatives portal. That's the one that it's a little more tricky than we had anticipated. But yeah, so we're engaged, plugged into that effort as well.
Awesome.
This is Joe Howling in South Carolina, and I'm just learning about the LCCs. But are there any fees associated with using this product or being a member?
No, you can just sign up. You can sign in. You can create a database and account, or if you want to sign in with a Google account, Facebook, or Yahoo account, you can sign in, and there's no cost for you to use it. We are in the pilot project. People had asked about those basic analysis tools. We have an agreement with Database and can make those basic analysis tools available to our users in the pilot project, and then they're going to review in a year how much use they're getting and how much that's costing, and we may need to review our pricing schedule to see how many tools we want to make available and how much it will cost. So it's ongoing in this pilot project, but for right now, there's no cost for you to sign up, and I wouldn't anticipate there would ever be a cost for a user. It would be in between the LCCs to coordinate with the different platforms.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions for Amy before we transition here real quick to close up the webinar?
This is Bill Gates at Wheeler Refuge, Amy. Love the presentation. I just wonder if there's any thoughts of, regions sharing data. For instance, karst habitat may be of interest, and it extends across different regions. Is it at that level yet, a thought?
I think that those thoughts are going on, and so that example, a good example of that is that group that I showed, this Ozark Highland Comprehensive Conservation Strategy Group. That's inside the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks LCC. That's a particular interest group inside an LCC. I think there are likely going to be groups like this created in the Southeast portal, which covers the larger Southeast region, where that might be a place to have something like a karst group for people who are interested specifically in that ecosystem and want data layers that are relevant for that. So I can see that happening. We don't have that group yet, but I can see a need for that and that happening in the future.
If I may ask another question, is there any effort to kind of develop standards on a national level so that you can look at large landscape scales and have similar types of data and similar capabilities?
Yes, there is. And so at the network level of the LCCs, there's data management groups who are talking about standards. And, right now, just the way that the LCCs were more formed from the bottom up, we're not there yet, but that is an ongoing discussion at the network level of LCCs.
That's great to hear because, making it standard early on in the process obviously is going to be very helpful to the users of this information.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up.
Amy, this is Melanie Rickholt in Panama City, Florida, and I'm wondering if you could direct me to any specific layers available now for where conservation priorities are laid out, like, and I know this was covered in the scenarios in the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozark LCC. but I'm wondering if there's anything for the South Atlantic, if there's some sort of a conservation prioritization layer, such that, say for land acquisition or something, or at this point, would you just need to assemble layers that could help get into that kind of prioritization?
That's a really good question. And so, like you say, at this point, the South Atlantic LCC has not completed our blueprint, and so our blueprint is going to get more at that prioritization of the landscape based on our indicators. So right now, that data is not available yet. We're working on getting a first draft of that available in the next year. In the meantime, we can have priority layers added in that are developed kind of independently from the LCC and probably don't cover our whole area. So I'm working with North Carolina. The North Carolina Heritage Program has a biodiversity and wildlife prioritization map that they would like to use the South Atlantic Conservation Planning Atlas to share that with their partners. And so we'll have some prioritization maps that were made for specific uses that don't necessarily cover our indicators or our blueprint process that we're going through that can be used in the interim in our conservation planning atlas. And so we're working towards that. We're not quite there yet. And if you know of prioritization layers that you would like to add in, we can talk about that and how to get them into the planning atlas.
Great. This is all very exciting, and Paul Langen is our office lead for these for this, and I see great potential. I think it's all very exciting. So thank you very much for today's presentation.
Oh, well, thank you for joining in and asking good questions.
And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did just quickly. I was also just scanning the National Phenological Network site, and they've got a fairly handsome data layer as well, geospatial mapping, so you might want to take a look at that and see if that can be among the items you can choose from in your list of options.
Excellent. If you don't mind sending me an email at that email address,
sure.
Help me remember to go follow up on that. And thank you.
Yeah, the NPN.
Okay, excellent.
All right, well, this has obviously been a hot topic, and we greatly appreciate everybody's interest, and please keep communicating with Amy because she's working with all the folks you saw there and mostly herself to try to build this thing to fill the needs for the partners. So please give feedback, and we'd like to hear more about that. Thank you, Amy, so much for making the presentation. And I just want to wrap up. Have any other updates for the cooperative that you wanted to present?
I would just say Amy touched on it. So as many, the South Atlantic is working on basically modeling the indicators, natural resource indicators approved by the steering committee, past, current, and future condition. And so we're going to start putting up some of the draft layers of those indicators on the Conservation Planning Atlas for folks to look at. So that'll just be a use of this particular case to start looking at some of the early results.
All right, thanks, Drew. And I guess I just wanted to follow up a little bit on that question from Panama City. I mean, the ultimate mission here for the cooperative is to really, develop this blueprint which identifies the shared priorities from all the partners, not taking priorities from each group and putting them together in layers, but based on these indicators and what the future holds, and then scenarios that we come up with, identifying those priorities that might include land acquisition or other conservation actions. So that's the ultimate goal here. We're just in the interim steps, and having this platform to begin to provide that information and have you have access to the stuff to the data as we develop it is, I think, a really good interim step, and hopefully you'll find that useful. Any questions from anybody before we close out here this morning? General questions, or if you have a question you want to ask Amy too, that's fine. But this is sort of the time if you have any general questions about where the cooperative is or what it's doing or how you get engaged.
Amy, this is Joan. I have just another question sort of similar to what Rachel was saying about the Phenology Network. Do you have the National Wetlands Inventory data set?
That was my next question.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I don't think that we have added the NDI in, but I don't know how that was overlooked. That's a really good suggestion.
Okay.
Very helpful in your part of the world.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you for the reminder.
Obviously you know where to go. Let's just check on the website. There's all kinds of stuff.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out.
All right, talk to you later. Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to just go ahead and close it off then now. Thank you again for all your participation, and we'll look forward to visit with you again next month. Thank you.